The Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation will come to order. Ask my colleagues if they could take a seat, and if my colleagues could take their seats. And we'll start first with the executive business of today. The committee is considering the nomination of Dr. Eric Lander to be the director of the Office of Science and Technology Policy. This committee held a nomination for Dr. Lander on April 29th, and I want to again thank my colleague, Senator Duckworth, for filling in for me and taking the lead on that hearing, and all my colleagues for participating. This position of Director of Office of Science and Technology Policy is charged with advising the President on a broad range of scientific and technical policies to address the nation's problems. We are at a critical moment when science and innovation has never been more important to our health, to our economy, to our well-being, to our planet, and to our way of life. For the first time in our country's history, President Biden has elevated this position to a cabinet-level post, underscoring its significance and importance, the role that science will play in decision-making. Dr. Lander, in the hearing, we went through the accomplished geneticist, molecular biologist, mathematician, and some of the work that was previously done as President Obama's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology, and obviously a variety of issues about past backgrounds and issues. I will say that I intend to support Mr. Lander today. He is the President's nominee, and while I appreciate the President has added diversity at various cabinet positions, I would have loved to see our woman here in this position. But no doubt Mr. Lander and the President have surrounded the Office of Science and Technology Policy and these positions within the cabinet with a variety of women who I expect to play very key leadership roles. But most importantly, Dr. Lander and I have come to a focus and understanding that the very first task that she should focus on is helping all of us add diversity of women and minorities in the science field. So he and I will be working aggressively on that. We hope that we can continue to give the committee and all our colleagues almost a 6-month update every 6 months of where we are on this process. In doing the Endless Frontiers Act, we have seen and understood how important an active and aggressive approach that we need to take to this. I'm very proud that the University of Washington had an NSF grant and worked on this very issue, and their most important recommendation to us is we couldn't be passive about this issue. This issue takes an aggressive approach. You have to change the faces of people who are doing science. You have to accommodate women in the challenges that we face, that we saw during COVID, of the fact that women were both caregivers and scientists at the same time, and thereby didn't have all the resources they needed to get their science work done. And so I'm hoping that we will continue to unpack this issue, that this committee will not, in 5 years, look back on this period and say, we didn't really move the needle much. I'm hoping that working together, we will be able to move the needle on this very, very important issue. Why do I care so much about this issue? Because I have seen the work that happens when women participate in science. I see where Melinda Gates did unbelievable work in attracting prizes for people who were dealing with infant and mother mortality at birth all across developing nations. And who showed up to win the prize? A lot of women scientists. Why? Because they really cared about infant and mother mortality at birth, and they didn't like our statistics. So I know that adding diversity to the sciences will help us change what science we focus on. Just as if when we added the number of women to the House of Representatives, we had a 32% increase in the amount of women's healthcare research that was done. So by adding diversity, we will be more representative, and so I appreciate the fact that we will be able to work together and move forward on this issue. So before we go to the rest of our hearing, it looks like we might actually have a quorum. I'm going to turn to my colleague, Senator Wicker, for the ranking member, for his opening remarks about Mr. Lander's nomination.
Thank you, Senator Cantwell. We convened this morning to vote on reporting the nomination of Dr. Eric Lander to be Director of the Office of Science and Technology Policy, OSTP. This is a highly significant position since the person occupying it directly advises the president on the scientific, engineering, and technological aspects of a wide range of federal government activity. The OSTP director has become even more consequential with the president's decision to designate this position as cabinet level. It is even more important than ever that the committee has followed regular order and conducted a thoughtful and thorough review of Dr. Lander's record of qualifications. I appreciate Dr. Lander's responses to our numerous requests for information during the vetting process. After carefully reviewing a number of matters that were raised and after considering his responses to various questions posed, I have made the decision to support his nomination. I'm grateful that he appreciates the need for equitable funding and research opportunities for all Americans, regardless of what state or region they live in. I trust that once he is confirmed, he will work with me in a collaborative manner to improve the fair distribution of research dollars as he leads U.S. efforts to make advances in science and technology. And I might note, we're working on legislation to this effect on the floor even as we speak. Now, Madam Chair, I have statements regarding the hearings of Dr. Rick Spinrad to be Undersecretary of Commerce for Oceans and Atmosphere and NOAA Administrator, Colonel Pam Melroy to be.
Senator Wicker, if you could
yes.
hold on that, then we'll come back.
Yeah, I think what I'll do, I may have to leave, so what I was going to say is I was going to ask that those statements concerning Colonel Pam Melroy and also Mr. Carlos Monje be inserted in the record at the appropriate point. And I am ready for the motion script.
Senator Wicker, didn't mean to cut you off, Senator Wicker. So
right.
any comments you want to make on the rest of the hearing is fine with me. So, but
Good.
if you're ready, I will entertain.
I'm ready, and we have a quorum.
Okay.
Madam Chair? Madam Chair?
Yes, the senator from Massachusetts, Senator Markey.
Could I be recognized for 30 seconds to speak on Dr. Lander?
If I can time it.
Okay, that's all I'll need. Thank you. I appreciate it. Just want to say to the committee that Dr. Lander is a visionary scientist and a thinker and will serve with distinction as Director of the Office of Science and Technology Policy. He represents the kind of new American pioneer, one committed to exploring horizons defined not by the boundaries of land and shore, but of genes and genius. A pioneer who sees unanswered questions as not barriers, but as an expanse of possibility. He exemplifies what it means to represent a place where scientific progress is a part of our DNA. His breadth of knowledge, unparalleled experience, and innovative spirit make him uniquely suited to lead. With Dr. Lander at the head of the Office of Science and Technology Policy, all Americans will be his students, sharing his passion for science, discovery, and achievement. So I recommend very highly Dr. Lander to the committee. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Markey. Senator Wicker.
Madam Chair, I move that PN 7812, the nomination of Eric S. Lander to be the Director of the Office of Science and Technology Policy, be reported favorably.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The motion is agreed to. The senator from Florida. Yes. Senator from Tennessee would like to be recorded as a no.
And Madam Chair, the following senators would also ask to be recorded as voting no on the Lander nomination: Senator Cruz, Senator Lee, Senator Johnson, and Senator Lummis.
Thank you. The clerk has that. Thank you. Okay, that concludes today's votes. I thank the members for getting here in a timely fashion to participate in that executive session. So that is now adjourned. Now we turn to our nominations hearing today before the committee, and we have a panel of nominees here in very important positions for our government. First, Dr. Rick Spinrad is the President's nominee to Undersecretary of Oceans, Atmosphere, and also known as the NOAA Administrator at the Department of Commerce. Dr. Spinrad, welcome to you and to your wife, Alana. Thank you for your willingness to serve. We are pleased that Congresswoman Susan Bonamici of Oregon will be providing introductory remarks for Dr. Spinrad as well, and we thank you for your leadership on many of these policies in the House of Representatives. Dr. Spinrad's career in academia, as well as the federal service at NOAA and in the U.S. Navy, have made him ready for success in running our nation's premier clients' workforce. NOAA's sciences touch almost every aspect of our economy, from weather forecasting, the need to keep our community safe, to satellite data needed for precision agriculture, to ensuring that millions of jobs in the United States supported in the seafood industry are managed sustainably and on science. Science is critical across NOAA's missions, but for us in the Pacific Northwest, science-based fisheries management is paramount. Salmon are central to our coastal economy, to our culture, to our treaty rights, and they are crucial to the survival of our orca population. So we have, on a bipartisan basis, secured investments in salmon recovery and restoration. In 2018, Senator Risch and I worked on the Endangered Salmon Predator Prevention Act, and there are many things that we have done to focus on what we need to do on habitat, on replacing blocked culverts, on working on other barriers that prevent salmon from returning to spawning grounds. So I plan to ask Dr. Spinrad important questions about that, particularly as it relates to the urban oasis that salmon in Puget Sound represent, and what are the things that we need to do in reducing stormwater runoff, pollution, and other things that are, just like here in this side of the country at the Chesapeake, impacting our fisheries. So we need leadership on salmon recovery, and I look forward to his comments. Next, we consider the nomination of Colonel Pam Melroy to be Deputy Administrator of NASA. I welcome her and her husband, Doug. Senator Kelly will be here to formally introduce Colonel Melroy, who I believe they have worked together, and he'll have a unique perspective. I have spoken about the importance of elevating women to science and technical leadership roles, and I couldn't be more pleased to see that President Biden has done that in nominating Colonel Melroy. She has an impressive background, having served as the Space Shuttle Commander, an astronaut and an Air Force officer in the Commercial Space Office at FAA and at DARPA, and as an aerospace executive. So it's hard to imagine a more qualified person for this role. Colonel Melroy, should you be confirmed, will ask you to pay special attention in keeping the agency on track on the Mars via Artemis program mission, using the inspiration of potential NASA to inspire the next generation of aerospace professionals, again, in the level of diversity that we would like to see, and focusing on maintaining our competitiveness and redundancy on our missions on issues like the Human Lander Project. Ranking Member Wicker and I put forth our vision of NASA in an amendment adopted unanimously, put forth our vision in the NASA, put forth in the Endless Frontier Act, our NASA vision. And I hope that this time our colleagues will help us get it over the goal line in the House of Representatives so we can have a clear congressional record for our intent about the Artemis mission and how we expect NASA to move forward. So I look forward to having those conversations. And finally, we will consider the nomination of Carlos Monje Jr. to be the Undersecretary of Policy at the Department of Transportation. Welcome to you and to your wife, Ann. Mr. Monje will serve as the acting Undersecretary and Assistant Secretary of Transportation Policy for the U.S. Department of Transportation. During the Obama administration, he oversaw the implementation of surface transportation programs, the discretionary grant programs, and efforts to promote equity and economic development. He also served as Chief of Staff of the White House Domestic Policy Council and Special Assistant to the President during President Obama's administration. So again, thank you for your willingness to answer the call to serve. Our transportation system, as we all know, is the backbone of our economy, and getting people to and from work is critically important. I can say in my state, it also is very important in exports and the export economy. Getting our products and products from other states through our ports and to their final destinations is a big economic driver. So making sure that we continue to address the efficiency as we come out of the pandemic is something we will be asking Mr. Monje about during our questioning. So I think, again, our colleagues, I know that Senator Wicker made comments and is putting in a larger, longer statement for the record. So we will now turn to our witnesses or I guess I should say our guests to help us introduce our witnesses, and we will start with you, Congresswoman Bonamici. Again, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Chair Cantwell, Ranking Member Wicker, Senators. It is my distinct honor to introduce a fellow Oregonian and President Biden's nominee for Undersecretary of Commerce for Oceans and Atmosphere and Administrator of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, Dr. Richard Spinrad. Dr. Spinrad is an internationally recognized scientist and leader with more than 35 years of experience. In 2014, President Obama appointed Dr. Spinrad to serve as NOAA's chief scientist. Dr. Spinrad co-led the White House committee that developed the nation's first set of ocean research priorities and oversaw the revamping of NOAA's research enterprise. From 2003 until 2010, he served as the head of NOAA's Office of Oceanic and Atmospheric Research and the National Ocean Service, demonstrating the breadth of his experience across the agency. Today, Dr. Spinrad is a professor of oceanography at Oregon State University, where he previously served as vice president for research. If confirmed, Dr. Spinrad would be the third person from Oregon State University to lead NOAA, which we, even the University of Oregon ducks like me, are very proud of back home. Dr. Spinrad's passion for ocean and climate science has been a lifelong endeavor. After studying Earth and planetary sciences at Johns Hopkins University and oceanography at Oregon State University, Dr. Spinrad held leadership positions at the U.S. Office of Naval Research and Oceanographer of the Navy. He was awarded the Distinguished Civilian Service Award, the Navy's highest award for civilians. Dr. Spinrad also has extensive experience in the nonprofit sector and in academia. Throughout my time as co-chair of the Bipartisan House Oceans Caucus, I have relied on Dr. Spinrad's extraordinary expertise as an ocean scientist. He embodies the value of bipartisan leadership through his demonstrated experience, working across party lines and developing partnerships with members of Congress. Most importantly, he understands firsthand NOAA's mission of science, service, and stewardship. During his time at NOAA, Dr. Spinrad successfully negotiated efforts to establish a global tsunami warning system, and he wrote key components of the administration's Ocean Action Plan. He's deeply familiar with NOAA's climate, weather, fisheries, and ocean research and exploration efforts, which means that he is prepared, if confirmed, to get to work on day one. Dr. Spinrad was an integral player in developing NOAA's scientific integrity policy. I am confident that he will deter any suppression, censorship, or manipulation of science at the agency and the Department of Commerce. With Dr. Spinrad's leadership in restoring scientific integrity policies, our efforts to inform the public about extreme weather events, manage marine resources, and solve the climate crisis will be informed by the best available science. Dr. Spinrad also recognizes the economic potential of the blue economy, which, according to NOAA's estimates, contributes $7.6 trillion to the U.S. economy annually. As Congress and the Biden administration work together to build back better, I know we can count on Dr. Spinrad's partnership to help revitalize our coastal communities and create good-paying jobs. We are at a critical juncture to protect the health of our ocean and our planet in the climate crisis. As our nation's premier climate science agency, NOAA is in an important position to help deliver on the Biden administration's goals. By confirming Dr. Spinrad, you can help raise the profile of NOAA as a key player in those conversations. And as we begin the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, we can count on Dr. Spinrad's leadership to help rapidly accelerate the collection, management, and dissemination of ocean data to protect the health of our ocean and our coastal communities. I strongly urge you and your colleagues to confirm Dr. Spinrad promptly so he can get to work to protect the health of our ocean, deliver the best possible weather data and services to our communities, and help in our efforts to solve the climate crisis. Thank you all for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Congresswoman. We know you have a busy schedule, so we so appreciate you being here. And again, thank you for your leadership in the House of Representatives on these very, very important issues. Thank you. Now we'll turn to Senator Kelly. Thank you for joining us this morning to introduce Colonel Melroy.
Thank you, Chair Cantwell and Ranking Member Wicker, for welcoming me here today to your committee hearing. It's quite an honor for me to have the opportunity to introduce my friend and my former boss, Colonel Pam Melroy, as you consider her nomination to be the Deputy Administrator at NASA. Pam has a range of operational and program management experience that makes her an outstanding choice for this job. As many of you know, I spent 15 years at NASA. I was selected as an astronaut in 1996, just 2 years after Colonel Melroy. We spent more than a decade working together, where I came to know her as an incredibly competent and hardworking leader. We were both space shuttle pilots and then shuttle commanders. Pam is one of only 2 women in our country's history to command the space shuttle. That's a difficult job. You spend 2 years, at more or less, training your crew, working with a large team for this mission. You're responsible for their lives. As you launch into space and come back to Earth, you are responsible for the success or failure of the mission. Any number of things can go wrong, and you're trained to handle them calmly and competently while leading a team in a dynamic and challenging environment. And you do all this while exiting or entering the atmosphere, or while docking with the space station, orbiting the Earth at 25 times the speed of sound. She excelled. And from that experience, she understands the challenges that this generation of astronauts will face as they test and deploy new technology to get to the moon and then to Mars. But here's the thing, she also has experience managing the types of programs that will be needed to get us there. Pam was my boss when she was the Advanced Vehicles Branch Chief, supporting the design of new spacecraft and new systems. She was a terrific boss and a great program manager. After leaving NASA, Pam worked at the FAA and then at DARPA, where she was Deputy Director of the Tactical Technology Office. Again, she was managing complex programs that involved developing and testing cutting-edge technology. That experience is critical if NASA is going to be successful in accomplishing what we are asking them to do. America's space program has a bright future ahead and bold goals to get back to the moon and then put a human on the planet Mars. Achieving these goals requires capable leaders who can manage complex programs while also navigating operational challenges posed by developing, testing, and deploying new technology, like new rockets, like space stations or science missions, and critical programs for our country's future. Colonel Melroy.
Senator Kelly, if you could just suspend for a second. I think someone who's on
other Republicans on the ballot got 51,000 more than Trump.
Someone's on our system. No. If everybody who's online could mute.
I mean, we got to fix these, but.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Kelly.
We're going to have a debate.
You know, if he wasn't so freaking.
Well, Colonel Melroy is without a doubt the right person at the right time for this job. No one is going to work harder or smarter at achieving the goals we are putting in front of NASA than she will. So, Pam, it's such an honor for me to introduce you at the confirmation hearing today. I look forward to all of you on the committee getting to know Colonel Melroy better through this process. And then I look forward to working with her and the great folks at NASA to reach new heights with our space program. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Kelly. Thank you for being here. And we do treasure your membership in the United States Senate at a time when we're expressing such an aggressive agenda on space. So we love the fact that we have an expert in our midst who we can consult with. So thank you for being here today. So I now ask the nominees to please come to the table, and thank you again for your willingness to serve. Please take an opportunity to introduce your families if you would like and make your opening statements, and then we'll turn to questions. And I think, Dr. Spinrad, I think we're starting with you first, and appreciate, again, everybody's trying to keep your presentations to 5 minutes, and then that'll allow us the most amount of time to have questions with our colleagues. Thank you.
Chair Cantwell, Ranking Member Wicker, members of the committee. I'm Rick Spinrad, a professor at Oregon State University, and I'm honored to be nominated by President Biden for the position of Undersecretary of Commerce for Oceans and Atmosphere and Administrator of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. I'm especially grateful to Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo for her support of my nomination. I also want to thank members of the committee for taking time to meet with me and share their perspectives. And special thanks to my wife of 41 years, Elena, here today, whose love, patience, and tolerance are the secret weapons for any success that I have enjoyed. My passion for the ocean began early. As a 13-year-old in the New York City public school system, I was fortunate to have one teacher who ignited in me an unbridled curiosity about the sea. My subsequent studies afforded me the opportunity to spend hundreds of days at sea and to perform research sponsored by numerous federal agencies. But I felt compelled to put this work in a broader context through leadership positions in industry, academia, government, and non-governmental organizations. This breadth of experience has given me a unique understanding of how science is developed and applied. It also gave me a deep appreciation for the sanctity of science and the importance of scientific integrity. My government experience has afforded me invaluable insight into leadership and management, as well as the efficient operationalization of research. At the U.S. Navy and in NOAA, I translated scientific concepts into new products, such as a warning system for harmful algal blooms and the framework for a global tsunami warning system. I have a deep understanding of the role public agencies play in the development and use of environmental information. As the former president of a small company, I understand the requirements and operational tempo of business. Commerce Secretary Raimondo recently expressed her eagerness to engage in public-private partnerships in the department. To that end, I, too, believe strongly that continually improving the dynamic of the public-private enterprise is an essential element of economic development. My own non-governmental organization experience gives me a deep appreciation for the role NGOs play in the policymaking process. I've led several professional societies and consulted for 501c3 organizations where I helped bridge the communities of research and advocacy. Academia is another critical partner for NOAA and a sector I know well, having served on the faculties and senior administration of 3 different public universities. I believe this diversity of background has positioned me well to deal with the breadth of stakeholders and issues reflected in the NOAA mission. If confirmed, I would come into the position of administrator with a broad and deep knowledge of the inner workings of the agency, and I believe I'm well equipped to handle the challenges and support the administration's vision for the future. I'd like to share my thoughts on how NOAA can continue to play a vital role in the future of our nation. We must build on NOAA's long history of success and meet the needs of the future by expanding, diversifying, and enhancing products and services for all Americans. If confirmed, I would take a full integrated perspective to ensure the agency is imparting the best-in-class Earth system intelligence, providing, for example, climate services and products in fisheries, weather, and oceans in an equitable and just manner for its many stakeholders. We must strengthen and galvanize the relationship of NOAA with the private sector, academia, other federal agencies, non-governmental organizations, and philanthropy. The federal government must help resolve the roles and responsibilities of all players in the field of addressing climate change with a clear definition of who does what, how they do it, and when and why specific products are developed in what order. We must ensure that NOAA builds economic opportunities while upholding the critical role of environmental stewardship. This function will apply to efforts associated with adapting to and mitigating climate change, as well as bolstering the established and new blue economies. We must position NOAA to take an aggressive and active role in diversifying the federal workforce and the general STEM community in a just, equitable, and inclusive manner. As one of the original authors of NOAA's policy on scientific integrity If confirmed, I also am fully committed to ensuring that NOAA scientists can do their work, publish their results, and engage broadly. We must capitalize on NOAA's technical strengths to bolster the U.S. position as a leader in global environmental issues. The U.S. must be recognized unquestionably as a strong leader not only in developing the relevant technologies and scientific programs, but also as a problem solver and capacity enhancer. I am humbled to appear before you, and if confirmed, I am energized by the prospects of working with the extraordinary individuals in NOAA. I welcome your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Spinrad. Now we'll turn to Colonel Melroy.
Thank you, Chair Cantwell, Ranking Member Wicker, and members of the committee. It's my honor to appear before you today as the President's nominee for Deputy Administrator of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, supporting Senator Bill Nelson in his role as Administrator. First, I would like to thank my husband, Doug Hollett, for his unwavering support on this very special day, which happens to be our wedding anniversary. I'd also like to thank my parents, Doug's son and his wife, and our extended family for their love and support, including my goddaughter, Katie, who's also here today. More than any other government endeavor, NASA inspires and unites this nation. With the tremendous bipartisan support of Congress, NASA's incredible workforce is ready to tackle our nation's most pressing challenges: economic competitiveness, climate change, and maintaining American superiority and leadership in science and technology. I've worked in aerospace for my entire career and have experience in each of NASA's 4 mission areas. If confirmed, I'm ready to help Administrator Nelson lead and manage NASA on day one. I served for 22 years as a pilot in the United States Air Force, including flying in Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and as a test pilot. As a NASA astronaut, I spent 38 days in space over 3 shuttle missions, serving as the mission commander in my final space flight in 2007. My experience in space gave me extensive knowledge of the complexity and the operations of the International Space Station and the rigors of human spaceflight. I had numerous special assignments, including as the Deputy Project Manager of the Columbia Crew Survival Investigation. I have an acute understanding of the difficult decisions NASA leadership faces in balancing bold exploration and safety. After leaving NASA, I worked in space industry before returning to public service at the FAA's Office of Commercial Space Transportation. This experience provided me a unique insight into the growing commercial space industry, which NASA increasingly partners with to execute missions, such as the Commercial Resupply Services and Commercial Crew. Following that experience, I worked at the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, or DARPA, as Deputy Director of the Tactical Technology Office, overseeing a large portfolio of developmental space and aeronautic technology projects. I saw firsthand how NASA, the DoD, and industry work together to develop next-generation technologies and bring them to market. If confirmed as Deputy Administrator, I'd have the opportunity to utilize my understanding of these agencies to help foster synergies and maintain American leadership in science, space, and aeronautics. We're very fortunate to live in a country with an incredible diversity of thought and experience, and that's one of our greatest strengths. If confirmed as Deputy Administrator, I would support Administrator Nelson in fostering a culture of diversity, equity, and inclusion at NASA, and support the role of NASA in STEM education, growing our great nation's next generation of scientists, engineers, and explorers. I also strongly support the Biden-Harris administration's goal of addressing climate change. NASA's role in collecting data about the Earth system is essential to this challenge. If confirmed as Deputy Administrator, I will work closely with NOAA and with other agencies to ensure a robust system of Earth data collection and dissemination. Finally, I'm a firm believer and accountability for taxpayers' dollars as if they were my own. My program management experience in industry and DARPA taught me that good financial and risk management is the linchpin of success. If confirmed, I look forward to bringing those experiences to NASA. I'm incredibly passionate about NASA and its mission. If confirmed, I would be honored to support Administrator Nelson, execute the administration's priorities, guide the next generation, and work with Congress on the future. Thanks for the opportunity to testify before you today. I look forward to answering any questions you may have.
Thank you, Colonel Melroy, and again, congratulations to you and your husband, Douglas. Makes for a very unique anniversary, I am sure. So, again, thank you to him for helping support you today. That's great. So, last but certainly not least is the Honorable Carlos Monje. Am I saying that correctly, Mon?
Yes, ma'am. Carlos Monje.
Monje. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here today, and thank you for your past service.
Thank you. Chair Cantwell, Ranking Member Wicker, members of the committee, I am humbled to appear before you today as President Biden's nominee to be Undersecretary of Transportation Policy at the Department of Transportation. I'd like to thank my wife, Ann, who's here today. Ann is a brilliant public servant and a wonderful mother to our boys, Sebastian and Leo. I'd like to thank my big sister, both my big sisters, and my in-laws who are watching from home. President Biden and Secretary Buttigieg for their faith in me, and the more than 50,000 professionals who work at the Department of Transportation for welcoming me back 120 days ago. These are men and women who take pride in their mission, utilize their expertise every day to improve the lives of people across the country. It would be the honor of my career to help lead that work. At the end of the Obama administration, I was Assistant Secretary for Policy and Acting Undersecretary. I worked on improving our freight networks, helping communities thrive, standing up the Build America Bureau, and advocated for the passage of the FAST Act. I previously was Special Assistant to the President and Chief of Staff at the White House Domestic Policy Council. I worked here in the Senate on political campaigns large and small, and in the private sector. I've worked for 3 presidential transitions, including the last one, where I built a team of more than 400 volunteers to do a top-to-bottom review of all the domestic agencies of the federal government. We accomplished our goals and prepared the new administration to take on the overlapping crises facing us. As we come out of the darkness of COVID, our transportation network, like the nation itself, is stepping into a bright but unfamiliar future. Millions of Americans are back on the job, yet many are forgoing their daily commute and working from home. People are beginning to confidently travel again on buses, trains, and airplanes, but transit agencies and airlines still have a long way to recover. A supply chain that was stretched to its breaking point as Americans stayed home and bought things online is still digging out, with containers piled up at our ports. And even as drivers were on the road less last year, crashes and road fatalities spiked for the first time in decades. The U.S. Department of Transportation is in a unique position to lead, and we need to. That means deploying the intellectual firepower of our research and technology assets to help state, local, and tribal partners anticipate and plan for the new normal. It means making our port, rail, and intermodal facilities more robust and resilient so that American farmers and manufacturers can ship their goods across the country and around the globe. Leading means helping communities make the most of their limited dollars through impactful grant and innovative finance programs. And it means rededicating ourselves to safety so that every trip on every mode of transportation ends with a safe arrival. Earlier this year, the President released the American Jobs Plan. At a time when we face a $1 trillion backlog of needed repairs and improvements, the American Jobs Plan would modernize our transportation system, improving more than 20,000 miles of roads and 10,000 bridges. It would expand world-class passenger rail services, invest in ports, waterways, and aviation, and double federal spending for public transit. The American Jobs Plan would reconnect urban and rural communities left behind by past decisions and give millions more commuters safer, shorter, cleaner, and more affordable options, whether they move by car, public transit, foot, bike, or wheelchair. It would combat the climate crisis and create good union jobs by sparking an electric vehicle revolution and by building a national network of 500,000 electric vehicle chargers. If I have the honor of being confirmed by you, I vow to work with this committee to strengthen the department and achieve better results for the American people. I know you and your staff have deep expertise on our shared infrastructure challenges, and that your knowledge of the needs of your constituents is unrivaled, and that your role as a partner in governing is vital to our shared success. In closing, thank you again for your consideration and the opportunity to appear before you. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Monje. Each of you represent such important investments, economic strategies, science issues to the Pacific Northwest. I could literally, I'm sure, spend hours asking you questions today, each of you, but I'm going to have to be succinct because there's important data to get on the table. First, with you, Mr. Monje, could you just tell me whether you support money going to mega projects? I'm concerned that mega projects that are the lifeblood of fixing big economic issues for our country always get left behind because they cost so much. Are you supportive of making sure in this next package we address mega projects?
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. These are projects that are very difficult to fund because they cross different modes, different jurisdictions, different states. Columbia River Bridge is a great example of that, but there are examples all across the country of projects that, if they were to fail, would really hamstring the economy and stop people from getting where they need to go.
Thank you. We'll look forward to working with you on that. Colonel Melroy, could you explain why resiliency and redundancy in system operations? I did not know of your role on the Columbia oversight, but that just, I think it's hard to explain how when we change in the integration of systems, that somehow in not testing, the individual parts to the overall system, as we found with O-rings, we missed something, right? We missed a malfunction at a temperature level. So when we look at Artemis and what we're doing, why is resiliency and redundancy so important? And if you could just throw in a few comments about why Artemis is, yes, a moon project, but it's a precursor to Mars.
Thank you, Chair Cantwell. Yes, I think there's many examples of why redundancy is important, particularly in space transportation options. And Columbia is a great example. It was very challenging to continue to build the International Space Station following that. And the amount of logistics that it takes to support people in science and space show us that having resiliency and redundancy in our transportation options are extremely important. As far as Artemis, I think I see it as a systems engineering problem. All of the pieces have to work together, and there have to be multiple backups. And to me, that's the meaning of resiliency. It allows you to have hiccups, which you will occasionally have with new technologies, unforeseen circumstances going forward, especially in operations, and it allows you to protect the mission and protect the safety of those involved.
Thank you. And is this a precursor to the efforts that we're trying to do beyond the moon?
Yes, Senator, it's incredibly important that we learn how to do operations and develop the technologies that will allow us to go on to Mars, which is a much more challenging journey. So we're talking a few days to the moon and 6 months at a minimum to Mars. So being able to exercise those technologies on the moon and really understand lunar operations is what will prepare us to go to Mars as quickly as possible.
Thank you. Dr. Spinrad, we had a chance to catch up about salmon in general, and thank you for your opening statement on a variety of things. I guarantee you I've had conversations with our colleague, Senator Blackburn, about using supercomputing time for better analysis of weather. And, we had another incident where we lost a crew that maybe better weather data and information could have helped us in that. So we definitely need better weather information. And thank you for focusing on tsunami in the Northwest. We focus on the tsunami warning system and what we need to do to advance it. But I really want to focus on salmon. You and I had a chance to talk about salmon, particularly as it related to some of the issues like fixing culverts and habitat and the impacts of pollution. And you suggested that, focusing on this with new levels of science could give us, better returns. That is, focusing on systems like the Chesapeake or Puget Sound as an ecosystem and impacts with new science available today could give us better interest and information. And I just wanted to ask, too, whether this is where you see the best return for our dollars. These big estuaries, if you will.
Thank you, Chair Cantwell, for that. I would characterize that as one of the critical questions for food security, national security, economic security. Your question invokes elements of habitat protection. It invokes elements of sustainably managing natural resources. And of course, it invokes issues associated with rebuilding critical infrastructure. I do believe that what some people are calling the urban ocean, and that is exactly the geographies you've talked about, places like Puget Sound, San Francisco Bay, Chesapeake Bay, represent critical areas for focus of not just research, but applications of that research to solutions to ensure we are sustaining these natural resources, including salmon, Pacific salmon. And I'd point out, obviously, in Puget Sound, it also deals with endangered species such as the orca population who depend on the salmon as well. In short, I believe the solution does lie in two things, one of which you identified, which is the best science, the best observations, the best predictive capabilities using exactly the kind of high-performance computers that you alluded to. But another key point is the active engagement from the get-go with the local communities, local governments, jurisdictions, tribal councils. After all, if we talk about the salmon in Puget Sound, the habitat protection is part of the tribal treaty rights. So I think the combination of the best science, the best communication of that science, and, if you will, a whole of government approach, including federal and state and tribal entities, will lead us to the solutions we need.
Well, we definitely believe in a whole of government approach. And on the Yakima Basin project, which was shifting to a holistic approach to water management, getting more efficiency out of the system, and returning salmon where we could, and yet still we worked together and came up with a collaborative solution. But what do you think here might be a science that we can help people understand might emerge from this that would help us? Is it at return of spawning? Is it some information? We worked with the University of Washington on when climate was impacting our shellfish industry and the complexity. So literally, for a very small grant, I think it was $100,000 to $200,000, figured out that we should be doing seeding for shellfish at a different time because of the temperature change in the water. Well, that translated into a big result for the climate impacts on the shellfish industry. So is there something here that we should be looking at?
Absolutely, Senator. I would say there are a few components. You alluded to the biological. We have to have the best understanding of how the ecosystem operates. There's a physical aspect to this. You talked about some of the pollution. How does that get distributed? What is the fate and effects of pollutants that may enter the sound? There is a hydrological challenge. There was a wonderful story in the Seattle Times just a few days ago about the different culverts and how effective or ineffective they are in transporting water and allowing the salmon up into their spawning grounds. And I would also point out a critical component of this is developing solutions that are longstanding and withstanding, especially in the context of climate change. So will the solutions of 2021 work in 2025 or 2030? So predictions and projections about how that climate will change, the hydrology, the flow of the rivers into the Puget Sound, and the circulation in Puget Sound, all of those have to be part of the solution.
Thank you. And Mr. Monje, just so you know, we believe that since culverts have been had a dramatic effect, that when we're looking at new transportation infrastructure investment, we should be thinking about these things. We call it salmon infrastructure, but we're talking about the negative impacts and preventing the negative impacts or dealing with the stormwater runoff issue. So anyway, it is connected, and so we appreciate it. Thank you very much. We're going to turn to Senator Fisher.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Monje, In 2019, then Secretary Chow established the Rural Opportunities to Use Transportation for Economic Success, or the ROOTS initiative. The purpose of the initiative is to better understand the infrastructure needs of rural areas, as well as to provide information to rural communities on available DOT grant programs. The Undersecretary of Transportation for Policy oversees this initiative. Would you agree that this initiative will help DOT better understand and respond to rural transportation infrastructure needs?
Yes, Senator. We know that our rural areas have disproportionate share of crashes, that the needs in rural communities are substantial. I think the Chow team and the Trump administration deserve a lot of credit for their emphasis on rural areas. And it's, my last time at the Department of Transportation, I was able to travel all around the country to see these projects and how critical they are. Vow to work with you to make sure that the department continues to be a better partner so that rural areas can compete for and get the limited dollars that we have, and that they can use them to best serve their constituents.
You know, you and I think had a great visit and a good discussion also about the needs of more rural areas to have assistance when it comes to grant writing and how to prepare their grants to make them more competitive throughout all the programs that are there at the Department of Transportation. Could you just address that a little bit?
Yes, ma'am. And so I think the Congress, in its wisdom, has established a number of minimums when it comes to what percentage of funds can go to rural areas. And I know that the career team that's part of the Undersecretary's office takes great pride in the work that they do to provide technical assistance to applicants so that they can get a project further down the pike. And that's true not only for the competitive grant programs, but also for the financing programs. And I know that there's been an effort through the TIFIA program to make sure that rural projects can compete for and get those dollars as well. You know, I was able to visit a short line railroad in South Dakota that really, it's a mom and pop operation, and they are the lifeblood to a number of communities that they serve, and was able to go to a rural outpost in Mississippi where the bridges are so weight limited that the buses have to go a half hour out of their way for school kids, which means that's an hour of a kid's life that you're taking away from being able to do homework or spend time with their families. So this is something that is important to the sector. It's important to me, and you have my commitment that we're going to continue the progress.
Thank you. We also discussed the reports of significant freight backlogs across the country, especially at port facilities, but it affects other modes as well. I understand that you recently took part in a discussion with the Department of Agriculture on this issue. What are your thoughts on how we can address the issue, and what do you believe is the Department of Transportation's role in that?
Thank you for that question. It's our supply chain is brittle, and there are a number of reasons why. I think as a government and over the long term, we need to work on our export strategy so that we've got more goods that are flowing overseas. Right now, it's almost a one-way cycle, and it creates inefficiencies at every stage of the process. And it was already a system that was that needed investment, but at a time when Americans stayed home, they bought things. Cardboard boxes were going all around the country, but we didn't catch up on the export side as well. You couple that with labor shortages caused by COVID, and it resulted in small backlogs that snowballed. So in the immediate term, we've been talking with all of the stakeholders across the supply chain to try to push for additional efficiencies. I believe moving to a 24/7 schedule at the West Coast ports could be fairly substantial. Over the medium term, focusing on exports on our supply chain and our freight strategies. And then over the long term, and with the help of Congress, identifying funding so that we can invest in intermodal facilities so we can get containers off of ships onto trains, onto big rigs, and deconflict them with traffic in the ports where they are. And that's true on all the coasts. It's also true inside the country as well, where we need to have intermodal facilities that are focused on getting containers off of trains, getting other goods onto trucks and into where they belong.
And then I would just like you to think about this. I'm out of time, but we have a real backlog when it comes to environmental impact statements, the approval time at the FAA and FHWA. It's longer than across other agencies, and we all know that adds costs to any kind of project that's going to be undertaken. So hopefully we can have the conversation in the future about how we can streamline those costs so we can stretch our tax dollars to be able to take on some big infrastructure projects. So thank you, sir.
Yes,
thank
ma'am.
you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Dr. Spinrad, I want to talk to you about Papahanaumokuakea Marine National Monument. You and I have both worked to protect Papahanaumokuakea. You know its significance, but our monument covers 483,000 square miles of some of the most ecologically important waters in the Pacific Ocean. Will you support a robust designation process for Papahanaumokuakea?
Thank you, Senator Schatz. And I would start by saying that I was proud to be part of NOAA during the monument designation for Papahanaumokuakea, and you have my commitment to initiate the designation process if I am confirmed as NOAA administrator.
Thank you. And can we talk about adequate funding for the monument, especially when you're talking about nearly 500,000 square miles? You know, there's a little bit of a danger of it being a paper monument that especially NGOs and even legislators and politicians of both parties are able to claim credit for having preserved something, but without adequate resources, you're not really getting the job done. And so this means money for management, for science, for enforcement, for Native Hawaiian culture, and for maritime history. Do I have your commitment to work on adequately resourcing the monument?
Thank you, Senator. One of the precepts that I would come into this job with, if confirmed, is that budget justification be a robust process within the agency so that justification for resources for all of NOAA's activities, including management of monuments, sanctuaries, national estuarine research reserves, be predicated and justified on the needs, as you described, in terms of personnel, the science that's needed, and the operational costs. You have my commitment to make sure that those justifications are strong and adequate to meet the requirements.
Thank you. I want to talk to you a little bit about aquaculture. My first job out of college was at the Sea Grant Extension Service, and I think now that I'm in the Senate, people assume I was a Sea Grant Extension agent. I was not. I was a project assistant, which meant really I just cut the how bush, which is a weed, and fed the fish at a 10-acre fish farm on the northeast side of Oahu. I have taken an interest in aquaculture ever since because I think when you look at a projected 10 billion people on the planet, this is going to be one of the most healthy and sustainable sources of protein going forward. The ranking member of the full committee, Roger Wicker, and I have worked really hard on legislation. Do you support aquaculture generally? Do you think there's a need for legislation? What do you see your role, if confirmed, in assisting us in moving this project forward?
Thank you, Senator, for your question on this. And also thank you for your co-sponsorship of legislation addressing what I consider to be a critical food security issue for our nation. It is, aquaculture has been demonstrated to be doable technology across the board. I think the challenges end up being ones of regulatory controls and standards. So I support working on those standards and regulatory controls. I would point out just recently I received an endorsement from the National Aquaculture Association, which I take as a very precious endorsement and one which I would, if confirmed, use to have the dialogue both with the industry and with the Hill here to talk about how we might get to a solution scientifically based to address what I consider a critical food security challenge for the nation.
Thank you very much. I very much look forward to working with you on this. This is an area of bipartisan cooperation, enormous potential, and I think, unfortunately, not so much in this committee, but certainly throughout the Congress, just because something isn't being fought over doesn't mean it's not important. This could be absolutely revolutionary in terms of the way we produce protein for ourselves and have strategies to both adapt to a changing climate, but also fight against climate change and work on conservation. So thank you for those two commitments on PAPA and on aquaculture. Mr. Monje, the Safe Streets for All proposal in the American Jobs Plan, the administration is saying a lot of the right things around safe streets, and I've had great conversations with the secretary in this space. My experience, however, both at the county and state level and at the federal level, is that safe streets always get siloed, right? That there's the sort of serious engineer types, the money people, where most of the money flows, where most of the real work gets done, right? The Federal Highway Administration goes to the state fund, and all the sort of big boys and girls decide how to spend that money. And then if you can break off a little bit for the bike people, right? Or the AARP and their safe routes to school or safe routes in the neighborhoods, then that's kind of the way it's viewed. And I'd like your reassurance that it's not going to be siloed, that it's going to be integrated into the way we think about this. And I know the secretary believes this, but the secretary can't operate the whole agency. It's too big for that. And so it's going to take mechanically thinking through all of the money flows, all of the decision making, and just to make sure that this doesn't end up being some sort of side pilot project. Can you help us to think through how to make sure that A, this doesn't get siloed, and B, this doesn't swing back and forth depending on whether the president is a Democrat or a Republican?
I think that's an excellent question, sir, and one that we are trying to bake in. And I just point a couple of things is that in the American Jobs Plan has significant investments for exactly the kinds of things you're talking about, whether it's setting aside money through the HSIP program, making sure that we are fixing it right as we rebuild our transportation networks, and also in our staff and who we've decided to put in these critical positions, including notably former state and local officials who are leading our safety work in the Office of the Secretary and in the Highway Administration.
Thank you very much. Senator Warnock.
Okay, thank you so very much, Chair. I appreciate the opportunity. My colleagues are probably getting tired of hearing me brag about Georgia, but Georgia has one of the most impressive transportation networks in the country. From the Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport to the Port of Savannah, to over 4,600 miles of rail, to nearly 128,400 miles of public road. Our transportation system allows over 10.6 million Georgians to get where they need to go: work, school, church, grocery store. It is also the backbone of our economy, with more than 362,000 jobs tied to freight and logistics, and over 2 million jobs dependent on the efficient movement of freight. Over the next 30 years, our population is expected to grow nearly 30% to 13.8 million. Our state is also expecting a nearly 50% increase in freight over the next 25 years. Preparing for this future means making transformational investments. Mr. Monje, if confirmed, what policies and programs would you recommend to ensure our transportation system is still able to safely, efficiently, and affordably move Georgians and Georgia products?
Thank you, Senator. The My two sisters live in suburban Atlanta, and I don't think I've experienced worse traffic than going up 75 and 85 up in the northern Atlanta suburbs. But when I think about it, the entire state of Georgia, you got to remember the Port of Savannah, as you mentioned, the fourth largest container port in the country. The incredibly thoughtful work that's going into some of the efforts to reconnect disconnected communities in Atlanta. The Beltline, which is a great example of multimodal opportunities, turning assets into something that creates land value. And then having creative finance programs to capture that and reinvest it in to the community. I think the jobs plan is a great place to start for the state of Georgia, and the investments that are made in our roads, in our transit, and in our intermodal freight facilities is really going to be key to the future of the people of Georgia. Investing in MARTA, investing in the streetcar in Atlanta, these are all critical projects, and I do look forward to working with you, if confirmed, to help you and the state of Georgia accomplish its goals.
Absolutely, and I know a little bit about that traffic that you're talking about, and it's the reason I'm very excited to work alongside Chair Cantwell on a new program that would help fund megamodal projects to address some of these transportation issues. And I look forward to working with you to address the ways in which historically there are neighborhoods that have literally been cut into and physically isolated or displaced by infrastructure. And so we have, I think, a historic opportunity to connect rather than disconnect people and resources through the American Jobs Plan, infrastructure investments. Thank you, and I look forward to working with this committee and Congress on a surface transportation bill and infrastructure program that will be helpful not only to Georgians, but to the American people.
Do we have Senator Blackburn online? If not, Senator Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Spinrad, unexpected severe flooding, as you know, has too often upended the lives of families and hard-working men and women in my state of Michigan, but all across the nation. And that's why I was pleased to join with Ranking Member Wicker in reintroducing our bipartisan bill, the Floods Act, which recently passed out of this committee. Our bill would help protect families and small businesses along high-risk shorelines and other communities by modernizing NOAA's flood forecast to provide certainly more timely, more actionable information, which is essential as we face climate change. NOAA's forecasting capabilities also position the agency to support the implementation of projects and programs that make communities more resilient to climate change. So my question to you, sir, is how do you envision utilizing NOAA's unique programs and expertise to prioritize helping communities prepare for and mitigate the impact of climate change?
Thank you, Senator, for that critical question. I would point out, as a predicate to my response, that last year we saw more than $20 billion natural disasters in this country, and those numbers continue to take a general trend up, of which flooding is just one example. NOAA has a rich history in the drought arena, and if you'll bear with me for a moment, I would point out that the efforts that were undertaken about a decade ago for developing a national integrated drought information system, I think are a model for how we can move forward to address the flooding issue. The work that you have done in your co-sponsorship on flood legislation, I think, is an example of how NOAA can focus and expand its capabilities. I would argue that NOAA, working very closely with the communities, with the state legislatures, with the private weather industry as well, to develop improved forecasts is an essential function of the agency, especially in the context of climate change, where the kinds of issues you've described are apt to become even more problematic. So NOAA's rich history of moving science into operations, as exemplified by something like the drought efforts, I think it can be parlayed into similar kinds of information systems for use by policymakers and decision makers for flood mitigation as well.
Well, I appreciate that. And as you know, Dr. Spinrad, over the past decade, water levels in the Great Lakes have fluctuated a great deal, which have contributed to some of the problems that you just mentioned there. And we're seeing things like winter ice covers decreasing, average water temperatures have risen, all related to what we're seeing broadly with climate change. And I certainly believe it's critically important that we monitor and track these changes. When we think about protecting drinking water, the fact that nearly 40 million people drink water out of the Great Lakes, there's impacts to biodiversity, invasive species, algal blooms, no shortage of challenges that this body of water faces right now. And so my question to you is, how will you work with the Great Lakes region in particular to collect the data, to monitor these changes in the environment, and what priorities in general, given the list that I gave, but the list is longer, what priorities would you bring to this position to deal with the myriad of challenges the Great Lakes currently face?
Thank you again, Senator Peters. I'm very proud, I should point out, that when I was the head of research at NOAA, I actively tried to foster the Great Lakes Observing System as a component of the Integrated Ocean Observing System in the United States, and I also had under my authority the Great Lakes Environmental Research Lab in Ann Arbor. I would point to those two as those two activities, GLOS as it's called, the Great Lakes Observing System, GLERL as well, in addition to the many, many weather forecast offices in the states surrounding the Great Lakes, as the tools that are already at the ready, if you will. If confirmed, I will commit to you that NOAA will ensure the focus on developing improved skill and expanded range of products and services associated with everything from harmful algal blooms to ice cover to surface temperature to lake levels will be an important component, a critical component of the NOAA portfolio, and I look forward to working with you and the rest of the delegations from the Great Lakes states to ensure we are meeting the needs and requirements of the communities in the Great Lakes.
Well, I appreciate that commitment, and if confirmed, I'll be knocking on your door an awful lot, so I'll look forward to working with you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Peters. I have one final question for Mr. Monje. In March, the NTSB issued recommendations on increasing safety requirements and oversight for commercial air tour operators. The recommendations follow a simple concept that if an operator carries revenue passengers, they should be held to a higher safety standard than general aviation and recreational pilots. Do you agree that revenue passenger carrying operators should be held to higher safety standards as NTSB suggests?
Yes, sir, and I do note that the legislation that you introduced in trying to make sure that the requirements for the Part 91 and Part 135 are harmonized and that we are protecting folks. The number of people who are getting involved in accidents is unacceptably high.
Look forward to working with you on that if confirmed.
Yes, sir.
Senator Blackburn.
Thank you, and thank you to each of you for taking your time to be here this morning, and apologies that we're also in and out. We have about 3 things that are going on at the same time. Mr. Monje, and I'm saying your name correctly, right? Monje?
Thank you for asking it. It's Monje.
Monje.
Yes,
okay,
ma'am.
Thank you. I appreciate the time on the phone. And I will tell you, we were a little surprised to see, day of notice, that the acting director over at the Highway Administration was going to Memphis today on the bridge. There was no notice, no prior notice to our offices, no way to get individuals. There's no list of who is being met with, what the assessment is going to contain, so we're a little bit frustrated with this process. I'm certain that you can appreciate that.
Yes, ma'am.
As this is a major east-west corridor. The bridge is out. It goes right through the city of Memphis. So this is problematic. And at this point, we still do not have a response from Secretary Buttigieg as to whether he is going to go to Memphis and when he is expecting to be on the ground in Memphis to tend to this situation, to assess this situation. So I hope that you understand that there is frustration. Do we know when the Secretary is going? You and I had discussed that earlier this week.
I don't know that personally, but we'll get back to you as soon as possible. I can tell you that as you mentioned, our highways administrator, the acting administrator, is there today, meeting right now with Tennessee and Arkansas state leaders. We've been in contact with them daily. Worked with the Coast Guard to reopen the river, which is a critical way to get supplies up and down the chain. Worked very quickly with the Tennessee Department of Transportation to, I believe they let a contract on Friday, awarded it on Monday. We were able to expedite that.
They did that on Monday.
Yes,
that
ma'am.
is correct.
Yeah.
That was
So
done
we're
Monday
going to do
afternoon.
everything we can.
So, but when we spoke with the Secretary on Friday, we were a bit frustrated that there was not an awareness, or let me phrase it like this. There was not a timeline for assessment. There was not a timeline to move to a mitigation plan. And we're continuing to try to work in partnership with Arkansas and Tennessee and with the local and state officials. So being a little bit more forthcoming would be helpful to us as we address this process. Let me go to a question for you on the motor coach industry. We talked about this a little bit also. There are numerous issues with the CERTS funding portal through Treasury. So if you would address how DOT is working with Treasury to ensure these funds get out the door as quickly as possible and what you're doing about those CERTS funds.
Yes, ma'am. And if I can go back to the previous topic, just to thank you for your leadership in pushing all the state and federal leaders to address the situation quickly. On the search program, very glad that our team was able to work with the Department of the Treasury to help them structure the program. Treasury is very good at putting out money, but they are not familiar with the bus and other operators that are the intended recipients of that program. I'm very glad that the notice went out on the 6th of May, and we stand ready and are actually providing staff to help judge and adjudicate the applicants that come in to make sure that we can get that assistance that Congress put out as quickly as possible and as fairly as possible.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Spinrad, Oak Ridge National Labs, and thank you for your time to talk. You know, they've been providing a supercomputing platform and some expertise for NOAA scientists, and we talked about the algorithmic utilization for predicting storms. The NCRC is defining the leading edge of computer modeling, dealing with weather and with global climate simulations. So I'd like for you to talk, for the record, a little bit about how you see that collaboration between DOE and NOAA progressing as we use the computer-based modeling.
Thank you, Senator. This is a critical component of how our nation moves forward. That is to say, the ability to use high-performance computing to develop improved models of weather and climate. The long history that NOAA enjoys with the Department of Energy generally and with Oak Ridge National Lab for those computational resources has been critical to advance that capability. My own personal sense is that the weather and climate modeling community is always chasing more and more powerful computational resources. If confirmed, I can assure you that I will look into how the rich history that NOAA has enjoyed with DOE Oak Ridge is pursuable in the future to see if there's even more power that we can put into this critical national problem associated with addressing predictions and projections of climate and weather.
Thank you for that. And as we discussed, we are really grateful that Oak Ridge is in Tennessee, and really all Tennesseans hold a sense of pride for the work that the scientists are doing there at Oak Ridge, whether it is with nuclear power, whether it is with the algorithmic modeling, whether it is with medical isotopes. Some of the work that they are doing there is going to benefit everyone in this country, and we are grateful for good, smart minds that know how to put that to good use. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Blackburn. Senator Rosen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate it, and appreciate everyone's willingness to serve and the work that you've already done in your fields so far. And so I want to talk a little bit about women in STEM, women in space. And so Colonel Melroy, the Artemis program, NASA aims to put that first woman on the moon. As the second woman to ever command a space shuttle mission at NASA, you've played a pivotal role in paving the way for this to be a possibility. And however, I know that you know this, we still have a significant gap in representation in space. And so if confirmed, you'd only be the fourth woman in NASA history to be confirmed as deputy administrator. So, of course, in order to address such gaps, research has shown it's critical to offer STEM opportunities and workforce development, both to girls at an early age and to women as they progress through their careers. And so during Administrator Nelson's confirmation a few weeks ago, I was pleased to hear of the continued support of these efforts, particularly the NASA EPSCoR program, the Joint Federal State program designed to allow more states like Nevada participate in space and aeronautics research. So Colonel Melroy, maybe you want to talk about why you think it's important for NASA to invest in STEM, particularly amongst women, underrepresented minorities. What can we do better so we can increase our diversity?
Thank you, Senator Rosen. I imagine that you are also a role model for your constituency as you have a background in computer science. It is important to see role models. NASA funds STEM in every state of the country. That isn't to say that there is not more to do. We all know it's a very leaky pipeline. And as you pointed out, we have to address every step of that phase, K through 12, undergraduate, graduate, and further on in the career. We have to work together. I think it's very important that all departments and agencies work together in this area. NASA co-chairs an interagency committee called COSTEM to address those very issues. But of course, I just have to add that as a little girl, I was inspired by the Apollo program. There were no women astronauts at that time. But I was so inspired, I went on to become a space shuttle commander. And I personally believe that NASA plays an essential role in actually executing missions like Artemis and on to Mars to inspire that next generation.
Yeah, thank you. I have a bill out there that is going to focus on STEM returnships for women who might be mid-career, who stepped off the career track, maybe to be a caregiver for a child or family member, or wanting to change and introduce them and increase their STEM education so that they can return to the workforce to be productive in those areas. So I look forward to working with you on that. But I want to turn quickly to highway infrastructure and I-11. Nevada, one of the fastest growing states in the nation. We had the third highest population growth in 2020. And so a new highway is essential to our prosperity. And so we are proposing Interstate 11 would run from the Mexican border through Phoenix and Las Vegas all the way up into Reno, where some of the major metropolitan areas have never been connected by an interstate. It's really important for tourism, for trade and export. I'm the chairwoman of the Tourism, Trade, and Export Promotion Subcommittee, and so this is critically important. So I've asked both Secretary Buttigieg and Deputy Secretary Trottenberg to move forward, their commitment to move forward on I-11. I would like to get yours as well. So, Mr. Monje, would you commit to working with me and the rest of the Nevada, Arizona delegations to support the efforts to fund, develop, construct, and expand I-11 so that Nevada and Arizona can improve our corridors, improve our economies, and bring visitors and jobs to our state?
Yes, ma'am. I look forward to working with you on that project.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And then speaking of tourism as well, if anyone has, you can tune into this and see on every Friday and Sunday, the I-15 corridor between Las Vegas and Southern California is literally bumper to bumper every weekend. And so we have some of the similar issues along Interstate 80 up in the north part of our state. Connecting Nevada with California and Utah. So can I also have your commitment to work on I-15 and I-80 so that we can, again, interstate commerce, tourism, and trade, it's particularly important.
Yes, ma'am, and it's true in communities across the country, and bumper-to-bumper traffic is a sign that the economy is coming back, but we need to make sure that the infrastructure keeps up.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Mr. Chair, my time's up.
Thank you, Senator Rosen. Senator Lujan. We appear to be experiencing some technical difficulties getting Senator Lujan on.
Mr. Chairman, I'm with you now, sir. I apologize.
Not at all. Thank you.
Not able to unmute. There we go. We'll turn the camera on.
Go ahead, Senator Lujan.
Thank you so very much. It's an honor to be with you, and thank you so very much for the work that you're doing. Wanted to make sure that we jumped into getting a chance to visit with our nominees today. And to Mr. Monje, the administrator has proposed a very necessary, substantial infrastructure bill that hundreds of billions of dollars of physical infrastructure investment for transportation industries like aviation, railroads, transit, and seaports. The investments are necessary, and I hope that Congress will act on a robust infrastructure package this year. However, the fastest growing and highest proliferation sector in space transportation, America is enjoying a revolution in new, more reliable, and more affordable launch of satellites and people into space. While states and local governments and private industry are spending many tens of millions on infrastructure every year, the federal government provides no matching funds for local spaceports and private launch facilities. Since you've been serving as senior advisor to the secretary, do you know if this reflects a policy decision not to allow matching funds?
Sir, would love to work with you on that, and I can tell you the folks that work at FAA and Colonel Melroy as well in her time there, I know they take great pride in the growth of the commercial space industry, and it was a beautiful day here in DC when they launched the SpaceX mission with astronauts, with American astronauts for the first time, and I know the folks at FAA are very proud of that, of their support of that mission, and would look forward to working with you to make sure that we can do our dual mission, which is to ensure the safety of those launches, to deconflict them with American airspace, and also to promote the industry.
Mr. Monje, would you support changing this policy to allow matching funds for space infrastructure?
Would love to work with you on that, and I know there are many areas of infrastructure where matching funds are valuable, and would love to work with you and your staff to figure that out.
I'm not hearing yes, so I look forward to working with you to make this happen. This is important to us in the United States, and especially with China just landing on Mars. We have a choice to do this or not to do this if we want to remain competitive. And so I hope the answer will be yes as we get a chance to move forward. The follow-up question there is, would you support setting aside enough funds and infrastructure packages to allow matching funds to help advance the 21st century transportation mode?
The 21st century, I didn't hear the rest of the question, I'm sorry.
21st century transportation mode.
Yes, the American Jobs Plan creates investments across the entire range of our modes: highways, transit, importantly passenger rail, our intermodal freight facilities, our waterways and ports. These are critical investments, and look forward to working with this committee, with you, to make sure that they get the resources they need.
Appreciate that. And Dr. Spinrad, for states like New Mexico, which are sparsely populated, how can NOAA expand weather monitoring infrastructure to ensure that data developed from those systems accurately reflects surface-ground weather conditions. Robust weather monitoring infrastructure is vitally important in helping develop and deploy emergency response systems, alerting transportation systems of inclement weather, and helping farmers and ranchers access risk management programs when needing to document the impacts to their farms and ranches.
Thank you for that question, Senator Lujan. As a resident of a remotely populated area of Oregon, I can certainly sympathize with the issue that you raised, and I think there is a rich history of developing programs for surface observations elsewhere in the U.S. I would, if confirmed, commit to you to try to develop similar sort of capabilities to the extent possible. I would also point out that I look forward to working with agencies like NASA for development of new remote sensing capabilities that could equally apply to the needs that you've described.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Mohan, back to you. I recently had the honor of chatting with Secretary Buttigieg and Deputy Secretary Trottenberg earlier this year, and I raised the importance of ending drunk driving. We're at a pivotal moment with technology and policy for industry, and the auto industry is looking for exemptions to liability for self-driving cars. And I said, look, if we're going to do that, we need to make sure that we're requiring the development and adoption of technology to stop drunk driving and impaired driving. Will you commit to work with us to pass the RIDE Act, which will get drunk drivers off the road and save as many as 10,000 lives each year?
Yes, sir. This is, at a time where our vehicle miles traveled decreased. Last year, we saw a dramatic spike in the rates of crashes and deaths on our road. There's a lot we can do, and appreciate your and Senator Scott's leadership on that issue.
Thank you very much, and thank the chair for the time today.
Thank you, Senator Lujan. Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations to each of the nominees. Colonel Melroy, you and I visited yesterday. Thank you for your service to our nation. As you know, one of my biggest priorities is the extension of the life and utilization of the International Space Station through at least 2030. I know that NASA has begun doing the legwork to extend the ISS through 2030. Do you agree that the ISS should be utilized through at least 2030, provided that it remains safe to do so?
Thank you, Senator Cruz. I really enjoyed our conversation, particularly the information about your family and your mother, who's a mathematician. Yes, I can say that I support the extension of ISS. We have a lot more work to do in microgravity science. And as long as it is safe and feasible to do so, we will continue to utilize the ISS.
The United States is in a space race with both China and Russia. Just last week, Mars, just last week, a rover landed on Mars. It's only the third time a nation has successfully landed on Mars behind the United States, and a mostly unsuccessful landing by the USSR in 1971. What are your thoughts on China's growing power in space, and does it concern you? Do you think the guardrails of the Wolf Amendment are adequate to protect U.S. space technology and our global competitive advantage in space and space exploration?
Senator Cruz, you are right to be concerned. It's not just the landing on Mars, which is very impressive, but also a couple of landings on the moon, and of course, the new construction starting of a low Earth orbit space station. China has made their goals very clear to take away space superiority from the United States. So we are right to be concerned. When you add the other concerns of intellectual property theft and aggressive behavior in space, I think I support the Wolf Amendment, as it's called. It's the law. NASA will continue to follow the law. It's there to ensure that the U.S. thinks very carefully about any kind of engagement with China. However, we have to operate together in the space domain. So there are times when it's in the best interest of the United States to talk to China.
What would the ramifications be if Russia were to pull out of the ISS and go their own way in low Earth orbit or partner with the Chinese?
Senator, it would be a serious outcome for the optimum safe operations of the International Space Station. It was designed from the beginning that with the assumption that there would be Russian and American crew members present. The current cooperation, in fact, on the space station with Russia is a shining light, actually, both in the relationship but also in the indications of soft power that NASA can provide. I think NASA is already talking about a follow-on eventually to the space station. At some point, it will wear out. I don't think it's unreasonable that Russia is talking about it also. If I am confirmed, I look forward to actually having a conversation with Roscosmos and find out what they really think, because we need to be harmonizing timing.
About 2 weeks ago, we saw the uncontrolled reentry of part of China's Long March rocket, the second time that's happened in a year. Thankfully, this time debris landed in the ocean, but it easily could have ended up in a populated area, killing hundreds or even thousands. How can NASA and our international partners get China to have less of a launch first and ask questions later approach and start behaving responsibly in space?
That's a good question, Senator. I think it's very important for the U.S. to partner with our allies to develop norms of behavior. I'll give an example. NASA developed the orbital debris standard mitigation practices, which have been proliferated throughout the world in law and policy. Good technical norms and safety norms should proliferate. We also need to call China out, as Administrator Nelson did, when they violate those norms.
And finally, what are your opinions on leveraging private companies and commercial space to achieve NASA's goals and our nation's goals in space?
Senator Cruz, it was really extraordinary to watch NASA inject so much energy into our wonderful industrial base and aerospace industry, kickstart a whole new generation of commercial space capabilities with the Commercial Cargo Resupply Services Program. Over a decade ago, began that investment. It is absolutely essential that we continue to invest in and support commercial space. It's brought a whole new price point of capabilities to the U.S. government in the commercial market and allows NASA to focus on solving the hardest problems.
Thank you.
Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you very much, and congratulations to all the nominees. I'm going to start with some kind of little different questions here. I'll start with you, Colonel Melroy. More than 150,000 people with cancer seek help at my hometown Mayo Clinic each year. And recently, Mayo Research is actually, maybe you're aware of this, have been working with NASA engineers, computer scientists, and software developers in order to develop an algorithm to predict how cancer spreads. Can you speak to the role public-private partnerships play in spurring scientific breakthroughs, particularly for healthcare?
Thank you, Senator Klobuchar. I think public-private partnerships come in many shapes and sizes, and the healthcare is ripe for those types of investments. And NASA has the unique capabilities of the International Space Station and a very robust life sciences community to support that.
Very good. Sort of along the same lines, Dr. Spinrad, the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, Lake Superior is pretty important in my state, is a program by the EPA and has contributed greatly to the restoration of the Great Lakes. As one of 13 federal agencies collaborating with the EPA, NOAA has been allocated over $178 million to help accomplish restoration goals using science, data products, and services. In your testimony, you note that you strongly believe that public-private partnerships are an essential part of economic development. Can you speak to how you would improve this initiative or the role that public-private partnerships could play in benefiting the Great Lakes region.
Thank you, Senator. In short, I think the dialogue between the public sector and the private sector could be dramatically enhanced with regard to where should the provision of products and services start and end, who are the components that have key requirements. If you look at what's happened in the public-private sector in the development of commercial weather products, for example, there's some wonderful lessons learned there that I think could be applied to a broader dissemination of products and actually the expansion, the economic development of new economic sectors around products. Earlier, we were talking with Senator Peters about the harmful algal bloom issues in the Great Lakes, and there's an example where I think tailored products could be developed by the private sector for particular communities predicated on the provision of fundamental weather and Great Lakes products through an agency like the National Weather Service. So if confirmed, I am committed to ensuring that we take an aggressive approach, as Secretary Raimondo has expressed, toward identifying where are the opportunities for new products and services and what are the roles and responsibilities, respectively, for the public and the private sector.
Very good. I just want you to keep your eye on the Great Lakes. When I first got on this committee, I got assigned to the ocean subcommittee, which I thought was just about oceans. And I got there and I saw all these mostly East and West Coast senators except for me. And I remember I wrote a note, Senator Schatz, to Senator Lautenberg, who was then the senator from New Jersey. And I said, I'm the only senator on this subcommittee that doesn't have an ocean. And he wrote back, next year, just come back and ask for one.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Message received. Thank you,
but the Great Lakes is really, really important, and it's part of your jurisdiction. Okay. Mr. Monje, congratulations on your nomination. And what are your plans to ensure that rural communities have access to critical transportation infrastructure grant funding? I'm here talking about the RAISE, formerly the BUILD grants, and the capital investment grants.
Yes, ma'am. As this Congress has directed us to do with both the infra and the RAISE programs, to have rural minimums. I was mentioning earlier that it is a point of pride of our team, of the career staff that work for the Undersecretary, to do outreach, to do technical assistance to applicants, to make sure that they can take the projects that were just on the cusp of being awarded last time and bringing them up to snuff and to be able to compete. And that's true for the Capital Investment Grant Program as well. I know the FTA team spends a lot of time, and there are a number of programs that can help rural communities. And in my previous time in the administration, I was able to travel all around the country. I didn't make it to Minnesota, but I would like to go.
Well, you're going to have to go.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So here's some other things related to that. Amtrak, longest rail lines that go from Chicago to the West Coast, provide a vital link stopping in Minnesota. Last month, I sent a letter to Secretary Buttigieg to include funding for passenger rail lines across Minnesota, including the Twin Cities, Milwaukee, Chicago intercity passenger rail. That's what I'm referring to, as well as a new project we're looking at, the Northern Lights Express, up to Duluth. Can you speak to the economic importance of these routes and potential routes?
Yes, ma'am. And I understand the Empire Builders, the most scenic of the Amtrak routes. As you know, the American Jobs Plan invests $80 billion in passenger rail. Mm-hmm. And I think the Midwest is, like other parts of the country, is uniquely well situated to get some of these city pairs. And something that was important to Secretary Buttigieg, trying to get reliable, good service between South Bend and Chicago.
Exactly.
And look forward to working with you to expand passenger rail.
Two other issues that I care a lot about. Port infrastructure, I understand you talked about that. We have, of course, a major port in Duluth. I was just there a few weeks ago. And we have to do more work, of course, on the shipping lanes and locks and dams and the like. Can you speak to how investments in multimodal port infrastructure are important to reduce delays in construction and keep us competitive as we work on the Endless Frontiers bill right now? A lot of our competitiveness will be dictated by how well we can get goods to market.
It's critically important, and we need to do everything we can to get goods off of ships, onto trains, onto trucks, and get them to where they're going. It's the lifeblood of the economy. The administration has proposed $17 billion as part of the American Jobs Plan for intermodal facilities, for intercoastal waterways, and for ports. It is a critical part of our supply chain.
I've led the recreational trails bills for many years, and just for your knowledge for when you visit our state, not only do we have huge use of bike trails and other things, but we also are the manufacturers of domestic snowmobiles and ATVs with both Arctic Cat and Polaris headquartered in Minnesota. And interestingly enough, the groups, the bike trails, the cross-country skiers, and the ATVs and the snowmobile users, you wouldn't really put all this together, have come together in support of the recreational trails program because there's different trails for different uses. And that's been very helpful in moving this through. And do you agree that good infrastructure projects with trails can boost property values, attract new businesses, and the like?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, very good. I think, let me see if I have any other things. This is good. One last thing, Dr. Spinrad, diversity in STEM. I talked about this some over the phone with several of the nominees, and way back, the last administration at the very beginning actually led a bill on this with NASA and then with, in general, with science that were signed into law. And I think we need to do more there. Could you just quickly address that for women and people of color?
Yes, Senator. Yea, verily, amen. I am firmly committed to ensuring aggressive approaches to diversity, equity, justice, and inclusion. I would cite as evidence the roles that I've played in various leadership positions to invoke exactly those kinds of thinking thoughts. And if confirmed, you've got my commitment to address that aggressively. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Klobuchar. Before we close today's hearing, I have one more question, which we ask of all nominees. Dr. Spinrad, Colonel Melroy, Mr. Monje, if confirmed, will you pledge to work collaboratively with this committee, provide thorough and timely responses to our request for information as we put together and address important policy issues, and appear before the committee when requested?
Yes, Chairman.
Yes, Chair.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for that commitment. Senators will have 48 hours to submit questions for the record to the committee. Witnesses will have 1 week to respond to those questions. Thank you. This concludes today's hearing.
Thank you.